Yeah, so I guess we can get started. This month at CDM, we have one topic on the agenda, which is wanted to do a bit of brainstorming about ways we could improve our ability to diagnose and analyze and fix failures, especially in Teuthology. Paste the link in the chat, or in Etherpad we brainstormed some ideas, probably the beginning of the summer or last spring. I thought we could maybe revisit some of those and perhaps make up some new ones. So let's see. So the first one on there about the scheduling, that's already taken care of by a Google Summer Code student this summer. Sharada has completed rewriting the worker as dispatcher, which allows us to have jobs lock machines before they start running, and therefore never time out waiting for machines. And also, when the jobs finish, or if they don't finish, if they time out for some reason because they get stuck or they just take too long, we now gather logs at the end of that for those dead jobs. That's currently being tested in the mirror queue, and hopefully we can roll it out to the smithies maybe next week. So that'll improve our ability to get at least get consistent logs when things do fail. Today we do have a significant number of times that jobs just time out after 12 hours, and we don't collect the logs, which can be a problem. We often can't tell what's going on without the logs.
Exactly, the cost of trying to reproduce bugs, which are hard to reproduce. Also to mention things like upgrade suites, which need more than regular 2 machines or more than 2 nodes, sometimes 5 nodes. So that is one problem that's going to be addressed with her work as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. We could potentially be adding jobs that take a large number of our machines and not have to worry about any kind of lock contention.
Exactly.
So I guess where I wanted to focus maybe most today was on the analysis side of things, like when there are a bunch of failures, how can we make it easier to diagnose and figure out what's happening? The first two things on the pad we just talked about, we actually already did. We collect dead jobs now, and Scrape is actually now integrated thanks to another student who was applying for Google Summer Code. And the third thing there, Sentry, is now back up and running thanks to Brad's suggestion and David Galloway. And hopefully we'll be able to upgrade it to a newest version soon, and which will allow us to have kind of links back to Pulpito, as well as the ability to create that kind of dashboard so you can track over time what failure rates look like in a given suite, for example. But in general, Sentry gives you like a history of when a failure occurred and how often it's been occurring, and you can kind of see perhaps even when it was introduced. It shows up initially in some testing branch, and then you later start seeing it in master, for example.
Josh, I was thinking this morning it might be nice to have might be being able to run Teuthology and set interactive on error from the command line.
Yeah, like a single command, like to take a suite job or something and just rerun that on your own machines.
So you can specify the origconfig.yaml without making any changes to it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because my workflow is generally copy into local directory, modify, run. Whereas with the appropriate command line switches, you could just specify the original file and just run it with the, a switch for interactive on error. And also need to check that we can actually, I know you can specify an archive directory, and I do, but I currently delete the archive directory that is specified in the YAML file. And I think I did that because the command line archive doesn't override what's in the YAML file. So it would be nice to be able to do that too. But I might have to verify that's definitely the case. I think it is, but anyway, those two would be nice to have.
Yeah, I guess there might be some other kind of YAML settings that they need to manually change that would be nice to not need to worry about if you're just trying to rerun a given job.
Yeah,
like you mentioned, archive directory is one. There might be some others there too.
Sweet path is the only other one I can think of, and that's already there as well. Like I said, the query I have is, I can't remember whether the YAML file has higher priority than the command line. And therefore what you specify on the command line gets ignored if it's already set in the YAML file. And those two always are set in the YAML file, so might need to do some tests on that.
Okay, yeah. That's a good avenue though. Making it easier to reproduce things and interactively debug.
Yeah.
I guess another way to approach this might be to think about some failures today that are very laborious to debug and analyze, and consider if there are ways we could make that kind of more automatic or simpler.
From my perspective, if we get Sentry in place, a lot of our problems are going to be easier to debug, especially because you will be able to track when the problem started occurring. And also, sometimes it could just be like testing branch or like a master, which we at least can go back to and look at what merged after that. Things like that today are a problem because you have to just go manually look or bisect or do other things like that. We do have things like cron jobs which run master or any particular branch on some frequency, but that still doesn't give us that kind of accuracy that we can get with Sentry.
Yeah, that will certainly help a lot, especially if we start running the suites more frequently. Like I think you just merged out PR today from Yuri to run the Rados suites.
Yeah,
lately.
I did. I mean, for Rados, that's what I've been pressing for, and now the idea is to be able to run at least 300 jobs. For some reason, I don't know, I was not able to get the subset value correct to get to anything lower than 300. The Tautology suite command just hung for me. Maybe there's a bug somewhere there, but we can at least get like 300 jobs running every night, and that'll give us a better picture of when regressions get introduced. But just for everybody's interest, people who are not aware of how Sentry looks and how Sentry works, I'm just pasting an example. There's been some failures that I have at least been looking at, and you can use it as a reference to understand how. I'm pretty sure the newer version of Sentry is going to have much better features and trackability, but this is a basic example.
By the way, I think you'll need to create an account if you don't have one already to see that.
Yeah, good point.
It might be maybe there might be a way to make the newer version not require an account to view it. At least that would be nice.
Just wanted to add to that, Josh. It'll be also nice once we get telemetry crash data integrated with Sentry, so that could help a lot, of course.
Yeah, that's a good point. It'll be interesting to do it. Like the way we're capturing the data from Tautology today, we're kind of just categorizing everything by the traceback that Tautology gets from Python, not necessarily the backtrace from the core dump. We might want to maybe add that to Tautology so that we'd be able to correlate that with telemetry as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure we somehow can find a way to correlate them. Yeah, still there's a lot of work to do that. So
Sure.
Yeah, but I'm sure it can help a lot. Yeah.
We discussed at one stage about modifying the generic timeouts, like a generic timeout in, say, the run task in Tautology, so that it actually mentions what script it was running, rather than just saying, I'm timing out. It should actually say what it's running in the timeout message that ends up at the bottom of the Tautology log. I know we talked about that, but I don't know whether it made it into the document, or even, yeah, it's probably something that I could work on anyway. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Thrasher. Quite often there'll be a job running and the Thrasher's involved, and something fails, and the Thrasher just seems to carry on indefinitely. So you end up with, because it's waiting for the cluster status to come back to health okay, or waiting for various inconsistencies in the status to clear. It might be a good idea to look at establishing internal timeouts within the Thrasher for those sorts of things, so that it doesn't just continue on indefinitely for 12 hours and then time out and you don't get any logs. And
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, at least now with the dispatcher, thanks to Shredder, we will get logs, but it'd still be nice if we didn't have 12 hours of logs to wade through.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even just loading the Tautology .log file, it's massive. And
most things actually do have timeouts. It's likely that whatever it is you're looking at just happens not to have one. It would just be a matter of adding it. At least they used to. I suppose that could have changed.
Yes, that might be worth checking in the Thrasher, maybe doing an audit for anything that doesn't have any kind of timeout.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the low-hanging fruit that Brad, you described is at least making the failure messages more obvious where it is failing versus just saying that something timed out. I know, I made a small effort towards this earlier just to improve the Ceph task. Earlier we had, like, anywhere we used to fail, we used to just say fail to recover or something, even if, we were failed to recover because it was some recovery going on, or is there some PGs just stuck? We don't know. Also, we just kept dumping all the PG dump. That just makes the tautology.log file huge. So I think this PR that I just pasted, that now just outputs the information of the PGs that have not reached the desired state, so that you exactly know which PGs to go look for, or like from the logs as well, if you want some OSD logs and stuff. But I mean, these are like small improvements that we can make, which can make debugging way easier than what it is right now.
Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe even just a global timeout on the Thrasher. So set it to some arbitrary time, 8 hours, 10 hours, so that It
That's
says
kind
to
of like
itself.
what the 12-hour timeout is today, right?
Is that how that works?
Well, it's not in the Thrasher itself, but it's a general
It's on
timeout for the whole job.
Chethology task, yeah, or job. Yeah, well, I mean, if the log gathering issue is resolved, then that's acceptable, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't think we should even wait for 12 hours. I don't. We've discussed this in the past. Our longest running tests are probably 6 hours or 6.5 hours. So there's no point waiting 12 hours.
Yeah, but if you've got a job that wants 4 or 5 machines, if it has to wait for 5 or 6 hours to get them.
Well, with the other change, that wouldn't be accounted the same way. So that's the correct fix there. You don't account for the waiting for machine element. Also, you can create a tighter timeout and audit the tests that really need a longer one and specifically whitelist them. Or specifically add an annotation to those tests that says I need N hours.
Yeah,
That's a
want
good
it
point.
tighter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can't be very many
thanks,
of
Sam.
them. It's like the big cluster tests and the upgrade tests, right?
Exactly.
objector.
Right. Yeah. Not the objector. It's the object store.
Sorry.
Objects.
And
Yeah.
verification tests.
Yeah. The verify, Rados verify.
Yeah, sorry. Object store, not objector. Thanks, Nia.
No problem. But I guess we're only talking about Rados here. I don't know what the longest running tasks in other suites are right now.
I mean, same deal. You can create a top level mixin that just sets the default for any particular suite to whatever it is now, and then go one suite at a time and start ratcheting them down.
Yep.
Are there other kinds of errors that we see today that are kind of shadowing each other, like where they have like the same kind of error message? But for many different causes?
Well, I mean, at a course level, any Rados level bug any Rados level bug that looks like recovery didn't happen or peering didn't complete could have any number of causes. I don't know if there are that many analogs to that kind of problem in other components, though. So that may be just a category in its own. I mean, I guess I/O isn't happening is another category. Like, that could be anything.
I guess that generally manifests as some kind of timeout somewhere.
Right, but I'm saying that the top level like effect you get will be the thing didn't complete before the timeout, but you could get that 10 times and get 10 different causes. Without further analysis, you wouldn't know what the cause was. So I think that might be another category, in addition to recovery and peering didn't complete.
I know Ceph ADM is a new area, but some of the Ceph ADM failures are really hard to understand when you just look at the failure reason. It's cryptic. You have to go through the logs and figure out what the hell is going on. So that's another area. I guess that's going to come in later, but something to keep in mind.
By the way, another cause of a stuck is that a daemon could kill itself, and without another task, thresher test, for example, could be expecting a healthy and active cluster and waiting that daemon for forever. That happens in Crimson's thresher test, because sometimes Crimson just kills itself without being noticed, even though that process does not exist anymore.
Yeah, Patrick had added some watchdog stuff to try to address that, but I think it didn't. It was not a 100% complete fix. Doesn't catch all the cases where that can happen. Maybe we could add something to the Thrasher to try to detect that more actively.
Yeah, I've seen that catch at least inactive managers, the watchdog stuff. Another broad category I would say is a lot of tests fail with wait for healthy or something. A lot of times that happens because there is either a health warning or a health error that is like possibly there because we did not ignore it or there for some reason. So maybe just at that point when we fail, we could just have like a Ceph health printed out before we are just failing so that we know if there is a health error or a health warning, so that you don't have to go back through the logs and see whether there was a health error or a health warning. It's like simple things to do.
Yeah. That's a good point. When we do encounter this condition, like print out the kind of common sources that could be causing it so that we can easily tell which one of these cases it might be. At that point, we could even try to differentiate the error, not just say we failed to recover, but say like there was a warning or PGs were stuck inactive or daemons crashed or something else like that.
Yeah.
Another category that I was thinking of was a lot of test cases we run have are test programs that have their own like test cases within them. Like for example, the object store tool store tests, or a bunch of other tests that use the GTest framework or the Python unit test framework are running a bunch of different subtests. And the exception that we're giving to Sentry and that we list in the failure today just says that the test command itself failed. It doesn't tell us which particular test it was running when it failed. So if there's like one particular test is newly failing, we won't necessarily notice that it's a different instance of them or a new bug without looking through the logs a bit more extensively. So that's maybe something we could try to parse out from the output.
Yes. That's the quintessential example is the object store tests that fail. And we've had instances when master is seeing a different failure versus a stable branch is seeing a different failure, and we all we tend to categorize them like as the same failure, but they are actually not.
Yeah, I guess that would probably be more helpful later on. Once the test cases are, or once you have Sentry up and running more in, it'll be more helpful to distinguish between the different kinds of failures there. we could do something, perhaps do something similar with the Ceph ADM failures. A number of them end up failing, maybe because it can't start a daemon running for some reason. And there, perhaps we could parse some of the output leading up to that to say more precisely why it failed, like if it failed to fetch the image, or if the disk ran out of space, or became read only, or.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, when can you hear me?
Yeah.
When I see Ceph ADM related failure, I generally see this keyword container Linux .go. So I think maybe if the container fails for some reason and it gets killed, I generally see this keyword. So maybe just a low hanging fruit could be to search and see what was the error related to that. Although the ID with it is different, but some observation.
Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe some common keywords that we could parse out from the output to get a better idea of what actually caused the command to fail like that.
Yeah, maybe Sebastian can help more on that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the other thing we could do. Sorry, Josh, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe the other thing we could do is identify as the really generic subsequent failures, such as an example there in the chat. That failure is almost always a result of a test failing and not cleaning up the directory after itself. So maybe we should annotate that message to say this is probably the result of a previous failure. If we can do that on the really generic failures that happen after a test fails, that will help people that are new to be able to say, I can kind of, I shouldn't stop here, I should keep looking. I should go further up in the log.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah, Deepika just said it was confusing for her, and I had that discussion in mind when I was talking about it, Deepika. Yeah, it is confusing. The problem with debugging tautology failures is you need to backtrack through all the subsequent failures until you find the original failure, which can be, many levels deep. So for people that are new to doing it, some sort of annotation on a failure to say this is probably not what you're looking for would be good.
Brad, I was just wondering, how do we achieve that? Do you have ideas around that?
How do we actually what?
How do we achieve that? Okay, if this is like Ceph test failure, so what keyword do you play? Like for Ceph test, you showed that okay, there might be some test case failing in standalone or somewhere. So how do we generalize it somewhere?
Well, I don't know whether it can be automated. I suppose it might be able to, but the first thing I would do is look at the failure reason. And generally the failure reason, if it's not a generic error in the failure reason is going to give you the name of the script that failed or the test that failed. So any error that's not related directly to the test that failed, I would be considering to be a cascading error.
That makes sense.
This brings up another thing at the bottom of the pad here, which is documentation. I think we could probably write up some good notes about how to approach analyzing a tautology failure, and in the process of doing that, maybe come up with some more ideas about improving that process too.
Mm.
And yeah, a talk would be good too.
Hey guys, I've been thinking about probably a Vim plugin to view the tautology log. Times the different source, the different output from lived with each other. So sometimes I need to sort of group the output by the host in my mind, or using another editor to do so. Do you think it's
Kefu, I'm aware of a log passing application that does that sort of thing, and I can't remember the name of it, but I should be able to find it.
so? It is used already, right? A third party tool?
Yeah. And that probably works better for people that don't use Vim. You and I are okay with a Vim plugin, but some people using Emacs or whatever. No.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can find the name of that. I know a guy that is submitted some patches for it, so I'll ask him what the name of it is and come back to you.
Thank you. Oh. One we implement by myself because I have been working on.
Kefu, you could also think about ways to improve the tautology log itself, instead of needing more post-processing tools.
Yes, something like that. But the way how tautology log shoots has its own upside because it's already ordered in the canonical order. So I've been yes, one way to attack this problem is to have a pre-parse. But I like looking at the log as the output of diff side by side. If we are interested in the interaction, and so we can look at each other in the same window, but two different frames.
And you cut out for a minute there, so I couldn't quite get the middle of that. You're talking about looking at a diff between two parts of something?
Yeah, something like that.
Now, Josh is asking a question, Kefu. He's saying, can you restate that? Not understanding.
Okay.
What two things are you looking at diffing, Kefu?
No, not diffing something, but just like how the output of diff works. Because we have, for example, in Git, we could ask the GitHub to show it by side, but this format of output also applied to a logging file. For example, in the left side, you could have the output from host A, for example, and at the right
Yeah. Yeah.
But in testology.org, the output are just interleaved, so it's very difficult to understand the cause and things. Just difficult to reason. And you need to go all the way down up to find the command which sends the output.
Yeah. I think the tool I'm talking about will allow you to filter the log so that you can get the output from host A and then filter it again so you can get the output from host B, and then you can do a comparison.
What we are interested in is the interaction between different hosts and tasks. Because sometimes if you send a command from testology, you are expecting the output from a slave, a test node. But that's an interesting thing. So sometimes you are more interested in the interaction between different hosts. So that's something we cannot achieve with the process tool. It should be integrated into a tool which is visible, which allows us to see the output from different hosts simultaneously.
So you're talking about aggregating a set of logs.
Yes.
And then, yeah, this tool does that as well. So it really makes me wish I could remember the name of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I get what you're talking about now, Kifo. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of treating the different aspects of the log as an event stream from different sources. Yeah, Brad, I'm quite curious about that tool you were mentioning, since that seems like it would be quite helpful for the Ceph logs themselves too.
It's grouped by the different threads.
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself.
Script does.
Aggregating logs is something that we do quite often, and I don't know why I haven't thought of this in the past. Trying to aggregate them in our heads.
Are you talking about just kind of sorting together the OSD logs? I used to have a script that did that. I assume a lot of people did.
I think we're talking about kind of viewing the OSD logs from the same time period in different kind of tabs side by side.
Wouldn't it be easier to just sort them together? Each log line already contains which OSD it's on.
In some cases, but sometimes it's helpful to see that sequence of events strictly from a top to bottom viewpoint, since you have more vertical space to understand what's happening on one particular OSD.
True, but my suggestion can be executed with a bash script and about, an hour of work. The other solution requires writing a new editor or a plugin.
Well, it sounds like there's some tool that Brad is aware of that already does this.
Okay.
LNAV, I think it is. LNAV.
Could you paste it in the pad so we don't lose it?
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but yes.
Oh, thank you. Is this a freeware? Didn't get a chance to
yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's open source. Whether it's I assume it's freeware. Usability.
We've talked a lot about the topology logs themselves. What about the Ceph logs? Are there things we could improve there to make debugging easier? sure there's more than 0 things we can improve there. At least tons of abbreviations that don't make any sense unless you go look at the code.
Everything's perfect. We don't need to do anything to the Ceph logs. They are amazing.
I'm not sure it's the kind of topic that lends itself to one top-level directive. It's more like when you debug something, you should try to identify any shortcomings in the log that made it difficult for you and fix them as part of your patch. But it doesn't work as well as a single line item.
Yeah. Maybe it's just something to keep in mind then next time you're debugging something. Try to consider what information would make this easier. Is that something we could change about the logs?
Also, if you're using some sort of debug levels that are not by default enabled, or if there's a particular suite that is not using that level of debug, let us say you are trying to debug a manager issue and you don't have a default manager debugging set to a particular level that will let you know what the hell is going on. We should always make sure that when we fix such failures, we go and add that as a default value to those suites. Because a lot of times failures are not reproducible. So in those cases, having that default debug level helps. Even vice versa, if there is something that doesn't need too much of logging and we can just do with debug levels on one particular subsystem, we should just try to clean those up as well.
I'm curious to hear more from folks who have maybe learned about methodology. What are the most difficult parts to figure out so far? Well, maybe that's something to think about and consider. Looks like Deepak has a link in the chat about a bunch of papers regarding root cause analysis. Yeah, this might be interesting. Curious to see Zoom at some point.
I just Googled it, so maybe if something is relevant, we can discuss it in that new meeting we were going. Like we discussed about creating in performance meeting or later.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Can add these to the I'll add this link to the performance pad. Yeah, about it.
LNAV is available for Bionic, so anybody who's got root access can sudo and could install that, and we can start playing around with it.
Well, I think we've covered a lot here already. There's a lot of interesting ideas we can add in the bed. Are there any other topics that folks wanted to talk about, or any other ideas around this topic?
Nobody has anything. I have a question, maybe general question, maybe for Kifu or even Sam. How's debugging Crimson tautology failures different from debugging regular classic OSD failures? I know you guys have been debugging some recovery failures and stuff. Is it just the same, or what is different, if at all anything?
More a question for Kifu, I think.
We do have a signal handler in classical D, which handles like sig fault or other critical signals, and it prints out the backtrace like the address to lines, which is very helpful to us for diagonal to understanding the root cause, and it also dump the unique ID, for example, to a metadata file. That's where we collect the crash information using the crash manager module. But this does not exist in Crimson, so we still rely on the address to line tool, the script offered by C-Star project. And that's a pain point of Crimson at this moment. So that's a missing part in Crimson. Every time I look at a crash, I always need to fire up a container container just to understand the root cause and to find out the backtrace. That's it.
It sounds like we should invest time in a backtrace dumper. Or we could modify technology to do it. Either way.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually,
It seems like it's going to be useful in the real world too.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's probably better to integrate it directly into the binary.
Actually, I was working on that, but I halted that because I was focusing more on Jaeger recently. Maybe I can do that this week or next week. Give you maybe some of your help.
I'd like to take the problem from the other side. Take a look at the signal handler to see if we can add this support in Crimson or even to C-Star because I think they are also suffering from it. In their homepage of C-Star, they are suggesting us to use the address to line wrapper script. So I think they are also it's also their pain point.
You want to package it and create a separate C-Star to address line, and then that would be used by C-Star as well as Crimson?
No. I think there are two ways to address this problem. One is to the postmortem way to address it, like using a script to analyze the logging file, just like how ScyllaDB and C-Star to do it is just like how we are attacking the problem in Crimson, in classical D to handle the signal and print out the backtrace. I think I would take a look at the second solution to see if it's viable in Crimson.
Sounds fair.
Well, speaking of the eager work, do you think tracing would be something we might want to start collecting with Dodology as well once that's merged?
Yeah.
It might help us with debugging a number of issues when things get stuck.
Yeah. Even I was thinking of that. Just wondering how. So maybe I'll once tracing is in, then maybe a second step would be to use it in Dodology. I don't get that.
Yeah, that could be very helpful. All right. Any other topics? Okay. Well, thanks, folks. This is a very productive discussion. Got tons of new ideas. Yeah, we'll probably revisit some of these as well. I want to maybe discuss this with next CDM too. So it'll be a different time zone and a different group of folks who may have more thoughts then. But anyway, thanks everybody, and talk to you later.
Thank you,
Sounds
guys.
good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.